He was found standing among the dead bleeding, alone and surrounded by silence. 2 days after the Battle of the Little Bighorn, soldiers combing the battlefield came across what many saw as a miracle: a survivor from Custer's command. A bay horse, torn by bullets and arrows, but still on his feet. His regiment was gone. The horse's legend began that day. The horse's name was Comanche. Comanche was a bay gelding of mixed Mustang and Morgan bloodlines, purchased by the U.S. Army in 1868 in St. Louis, Missouri. He was shipped to Fort Leavenworth, Kansas, along with other remounts intended for frontier duty. There, he caught the attention of Captain Myles Keogh of the newly formed 7th U.S. Cavalry, a man with a remarkable past of his own. Keogh was born in County Carlow, Ireland, and had already fought in the Papal Army defending Rome during the Italian Wars before crossing the Atlantic to join the Union cause in the American Civil War. He served as a cavalry officer under generals like John Buford and George Stoneman, and earned a reputation for courage and horsemanship. By the time he joined the 7th Cavalry on the western frontier, he was seasoned, respected, and deeply familiar with the hardships of mounted warfare. When he selected Comanche at Fort Leavenworth, he was drawn to the horse's calm composure under stress. In one of their first campaigns, the horse was struck by an arrow during fighting on the plains, likely in an engagement involving Comanche or Kiowa warriors. Rather than faltering, he kept moving and stayed with Keogh throughout the action, impressed. Keogh named the horse Comanche in acknowledgement of both the enemy and the animal's resilience. By the mid-1870s, tensions between the U.S. government and Plains tribes were at a breaking point. The Fort Laramie Treaty of 1868 had guaranteed the Lakota, Northern Cheyenne, and Arapaho rights to the Black Hills and surrounding hunting grounds. That changed abruptly after gold was discovered in the Black Hills in 1874. During an expedition led by Lieutenant Colonel George Armstrong Custer, prospectors flooded treaty land, and the U.S. government soon demanded the tribes move onto reservations or be treated as hostile. Many Lakota and Cheyenne bands, led by chiefs like Sitting Bull, Crazy Horse, Gall, and Two Moons, refused to surrender their land or way of life. In response, the Army launched a campaign to force them in by summer 1876. Custer, commanding the 7th Cavalry, was part of a coordinated effort to locate and subdue native forces. For the Lakota, Cheyenne, and Arapaho, the gathering at the Little Bighorn River was not an uprising. It was a defensive coalition of families, hunters, and warriors pushed to their limit by treaty violations, broken promises, and the destruction of their land and food sources. Many of the warriors had just come from winter starvation and relentless pursuit by U.S. troops. when Custer's divided command attacked the village. On June 25, 1876, Native leaders and warriors fought to defend their families and resist forced relocation. From their viewpoint, the victory at the Little Bighorn was not an ambush or massacre, was survival. Custer's decision to split his forces proved catastrophic. Myles Keogh and his battalion rode with him into the final engagement. By the end of the battle, Custer and over 200 men from his immediate command were dead. Horses were shot, captured, or scattered. Some were taken by native warriors afterward and used or traded. Comanche was found about 2 days later near Keogh's body. Comanche was gravely wounded, shot and pierced in multiple places, but miraculously alive. Soldiers carried him back to the fort and tended to him with unusual dedication. Though other cavalry horses survived elsewhere on the battlefield, Comanche became the only surviving horse recovered from Custer's direct command. After months of care at Fort Lincoln, Comanche recovered. His survival became part of the public narrative surrounding the devastating defeat. Newspapers and the army itself called him the sole survivor of Custer's command. Not literally true, but symbolically very powerful. In 1878, General Orders No. 7 officially retired him. He was never to be ridden again and would appear only at formal regimental functions, saddled but without a rider. He later spent most of his time at Fort Riley, Kansas, where he became beloved by soldiers. His caretaker, farrier John Rivers of Keogh's old Company I, helped preserve his story. Over the years, Comanche is said to have acquired a love for the taste of beer. Soldiers occasionally gave him a small bucket or cup as a treat, and by most accounts, he accepted it eagerly. It became part of his legend, an old heroic cavalry horse, battle-scarred and dignified, enjoying a drink among the soldiers who guarded him. Comanche died on November 7, 1891, at roughly 29 years old, an impressive age for a warhorse. He received a military funeral with honors, one of the few animals in U.S. history accorded such recognition. Rather than being buried, his remains were preserved and sent to the University of Kansas. His taxidermied form still stands in Deitch Hall at the University of Kansas Natural History Museum in Lawrence. Comanche's fame grew not because of heroics in battle, but because he embodied a turning point in American history. His image represented the fall of Custer, the tragic end of an era of free roaming plains, warriors, and the myth of frontier valor. As time passed, he evolved into a softer symbol, less about military glory and more about endurance, memory, and the complicated legacy of the West. To the 7th Cavalry, he was a living memorial. To the public, he became a relic of a story told told more in legend than fact. For some native descendants, he represents the irony of what history chose to preserve and what it chose to silence. Today, standing behind glass, Comanche remains one of the most recognizable non-human figures from the Indian Wars.